Hello everyone, and best wishes from the Isle of Wight, which is windy and sunny today. As you can see, we are still struggling with our computers, with our technology, but computers tend to say no every time I use them for some reason. Anyway, let's start. Today, I will be presenting a first stage of the unwanted change curve. But before I will do it, it's probably useful to remind you who I am, to introduce myself. I'm Zoryna, and I'm a member of the Changemaker group. I'm one of the admins of this network page and have a privilege today to talk about the shock stage of the unwanted change curve. Well, just to remind you, as computer still says no, I printed a picture for you. So this is our first stage, our shock stage. And this is, if you remember, if you cast your memory to the moment when you first realized that coronavirus or COVID-19 came to the UK or to your country where you are located if you are from the outside of UK. This is the first sensation that you experienced, the shock and stress which came together with it. From the point of view of brain, what's happened there is your amygdala became activated. And to make it more visible and easier to understand, I will show you something which is known as brain in the palm of your hand model, which was proposed by Dr. Dan Siegel. So if you imagine that my thumb here is a brain and my eyes are somewhere here in front, my fingers here will be my prefrontal cortex, the frontal part of the brain where we have our thinking and cognition, rational thinking going on. And if we open prefrontal cortex and go deep inside, what we notice there will be an amygdala. Amygdala, which many of you are familiar, you know it is a part of the brain which is responsible for our stress response, almost our alarm system, and it also deals with a lot of emotions. Below amygdala and linked to it is hippocampus, part of the brain which is responsible for processing memories. And also it plays an important part in calming down our amygdala. So if we close our brain again, and it is nice and whole, as soon as you hear something shocking, horrible event, horrible news, if something happening around you, event which can potentially present danger to your life, your lead is going off, your alarm system, your amygdala is activated. It's almost and that's it. You're in the state of the panic. And in this state, it is impossible to talk yourself out of the stress because you are thinking, your rational part of the brain is disengaged, your lead is up. So what you need to do in order to calm down is to calm down the amygdala. So when you do it, your lead comes back and you are able to continue operating as a rational thinking human being rather than operate in a state of alarm where you are in a state of fight or flight or freeze response. So how can you close this lead? Well, as I said, it is very difficult to do it with just saying to yourself or listening to somebody else telling you, calm down, nothing to worry about. Your amygdala does not react to the words. It does not process this information. At the point where your amygdala is activated, you have an injection of adrenaline into your system, which affects your cardiovascular system, a lot of other organs and systems in your body. And so you are in a state when you are prepared to fight or flight or freeze. What is good about this stage is that usually it does not last long, because adrenaline has a temporary impact on our body and on our brain. However, if we don't calm our amygdala, if we don't calm ourselves down, then we can trigger secondary response, which will be a chronic stress response, which is driven by different hormone, which is cortisol. Cortisol is a long-lasting hormone, and it has a terrible impact on our immune system and a lot of other systems and organs in our body as a result. So if you want to enter, to exit a stage of shock without going into the stage of chronic stress, the best thing you can do is to calm down your amygdala. And to do so, you can do a number of things. The easiest, the simplest, and the fastest thing is to use what is called box breathing. Box breathing is when you are breathing in through your nose, full in, then you count to count of 3 or 4, pause, and then completely exit and exhale everything. Then another pause until count of 3 or 4, whatever is comfortable for you, and then another deep intake of breath. So it looks and feels like and you just continue breathing in this way, cycle of 3 or 5 square box breaths. After that, your limbic system, your amygdala will come down, your lid will come down, and you start, you will be able to start thinking rationally. Another very good method to calm down your amygdala and calm down yourself in a state of shock is grounding, where you notice, you look around and notice 4 or 5 things that you can see, and you say to yourself in your mind, I can see first thing, I can see second thing, and so forth. After that, you can close your eyes and listen what you can hear. And then when you notice every sound, you say, I can hear dogs barking, or I can hear wind, or I can hear people talking, whatever it is, 3 or 4 things that you can hear. And after that, still with your eyes closed, you can focus your attention on your body and notice, how does it feel to sit or stand or lie down, whatever you were doing at the time? How does it feel to breathe? Notice how your chest is moving as you are breathing. Notice the temperature of the air coming in and out of your body. All those things, notice. And then just open your eyes, continue breathing as normal, and you will notice that you immediately started coming down, because your body and your brain are unable to focus on something shocking and focus on senses, which will give you very peaceful, very calm information, which will reassure your amygdala that nothing terrible is going on around. There is no tigers, no lions, and you can breathe as normal. So it's a second thing which you can use. After that, it is important to acknowledge your emotions. During the state of shock or stage of shock of unwanted change curve, you will notice very strong emotions. It could be fear, it could be anger, it could be a sense of being powerless in the situation. Understanding and acknowledging those emotions will be very useful to you, because then you will be able to think about how you can deal with those emotions, how you can respond to them. Unfortunately, we are not very familiar with a lot of different emotions. And so I often recommend people to use the wheel of emotions. I believe Simon is either going to upload it on the chat, or we will do it later after this session. But this is how it looks. It's a wheel which shows all different emotions, and not just the primary emotions, but also subsets, submodalities of them, because there are so many nuances in different emotions. And when you are very specific about what exactly do you feel, what exactly is the emotion that you experience, then you can choose respond to this emotion in the way that you think is right for you. So you can choose to focus on things which are under your control. As you know, there are things in our lives where we have control, such as ourselves, what we are doing in every single moment. We even can control our thoughts if we want to. There are things which we can, to a degree, control, such as behavior of our nearest and dearest. When we remind, for example, our children or our partners, remember to wash your hands 20 minutes. There is a degree of control if they listen to us, we are influencing. And there are other things where we have no control. I have no control of the wind, I have no control of the rain, or some other things. So focusing on things that we can control and influence will help us to feel more secure, more in control of the whole situation, and it will prepare us to respond rather than react. Reaction is immediate. It is driven by amygdala, where amygdala is saying, ah, and our lid is coming off. But we can choose to calm down amygdala and respond. And this is where real freedom, this is where real growth is. So just to reiterate, my top tips for the shock stage of the curve. I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to show. I hope you can see it somehow. So it is first tip, calm down your amygdala. Use breathing exercise, for example, box breathing or other slow breathing exercise. Use grounding technique where you engage all your senses to tell amygdala that everything is fine. You are safe right now. Acknowledge your emotions and use the wheel of emotions so that you can be very precise and very specific about what is it you are experiencing, so that you can choose how you respond. And then remind yourself about all the areas in your lives that you can control, starting with your response to the events which are happening around you. So those are my 3 tips, and as I said, you will find out this information and image of the emotions wheel in the comments section of this live session. Just one final comment I want to make before we will move to the questions. The comment is, when you look at the curve, unwanted change curve, just to remind you about it again, it shows different stages. It is important to remember that the process of going through the curve is not linear. And although it starts with a shock and then moving down, sometimes events can happen which will throw us back into the shock stage. And then we continue sort of going through this cycle again and again. And at any stage of the curve, we can be sliding back, we can be cycling back. But when we know how to deal with all those changes, with all those stages of the unwanted change, we will be able to respond rather than react. And my fellow change makers will tell you more about all different stages of the curve, and it will happen in the next live sessions. So for now, I am very happy to answer your questions. Please. If any one of you, I saw a couple of comments there about the hand or brain in the palm of the hand model. If you're interested, you can find actual video of Daniel Siegel explaining this model as well, and you can use it in your work to show other people, to explain what is happening with our brain when we are stressed, when we are in a state of shock. So all you need to do is just Google brain in the palm of your hand, model, or Dan Siegel model of the brain, and you will find a lot of information, including the video on YouTube. New comments are there. Okay. How do you remind yourself to follow the hand model? Well, you don't need to remind yourself to follow the model. It's just useful to understand that this is what is happening with our brain, that there is an amygdala, and lid is coming off when you are stressed, and you need to calm down, you need to put lid down. You can't do it by self-talk or somebody else talking to you. You need to do it through your breathing, through accessing your senses, all your senses. This is what you need to remember, and model just explain and reminds you why it is so important. How do you know that you are in shock, in state of shock? Well, people experience the state in different way. But if you ever had this sort of situation that something happened and you're almost sort of deep intake of breath, or you suddenly freeze and unable to think or concentrate, or suddenly your heart is racing, your temperature is rising, you are getting either red or white. Different people react in different, depending on situation and circumstances. As soon as you become aware that this is happening to you, this is the first sign that you are in a state of acute stress or shock, we can call it, a situational stress, where something happened and you react immediately. Your body reacts before you become aware of it. So you just need to pay attention to what is happening with you. And as soon as you realize that this is what is happening, as soon as you feel first signs of anxiety, you may be hyperventilating. Some people do start hyperventilating quite quickly. Immediate, the fastest, the most effective exercise, in my opinion, is box breathing. Actually, in some disciplines, it's also called breath of life. This is how important this exercise is. Okay, let me look. Any other questions? What if you don't realize that you're in shock? Well, it is possible that you don't realize. Some of the people may be not as aware of their sensations and emotions. It's very typical for modern people because we tend to live in our head, in our sort of thinking space, and we are not as sensitive to our connection to the rest of the body. We sort of don't take signals easily from the body. So I would suggest, in the times that are stressful, generally speaking, you can use this box breathing, breath of life regularly, number of times through the day. You can do grounding technique number of times through the day when you just have pause. It literally takes 1 minute each. But also I can recommend this amazing book of amazing method, Mind Chi. You can use this method, which is described in this fantastic book, and spend just 8 minutes a day rewiring your brain to become calm and to become brain that responds rather than reacts to events that are happening in our life. So you are in control of your life and your well-being. Any more questions? Let me look what we have there. Does shock pass over time? Yes, it does. Shock itself, as I said, it's adrenaline-driven reaction of our body, and adrenaline, the impact of adrenaline is short-lived. If you calm yourself down using techniques which I mentioned today, or any other techniques potentially, then it is easier, the shock will be ended there. However, if you didn't calm yourself enough, you did it just once and don't do it consistently throughout the day to keep your lid firmly down, you may continue responding in stressful way, which will not be as acute as a shock reaction, as adrenaline-driven reaction, but you will be at risk at going into a chronic stress, where a lot of little things will drip, 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 and your body will respond by issuing or sort of dripping cortisol into your system, another stress hormone, hormone responsible for long-term stress, chronic stress, and this will sort of gradually impact your body and your mind in a negative way. So again, you will need to take some self-care, which will be covered in further sessions, in order to stop development of the stress, to minimize its impact on your body, on yourself. Because at the end of the day, stress is how we respond to something. We have choice, we have ability to control our reaction. We don't have to be stressed. Sometimes we just don't know how to deal with it. How would you support somebody who you suspect they are in shock? I always start with breathing. I just suggest people, let's breathe with me. Sometimes if it is sort of in close proximity, not through a webcam, you can hold the elbow of the person and just move them up and down as you breathe, as you show them how they should be breathing. Stop when there is a pause and just lead them into the space of breathing. It works fantastically. Can shock be good thing as well as bad thing? I suppose as any stress, it could be good or bad, depending how much of it, how long it lasts, and how quickly you are able to calm yourself down and recover. Actually, when we are talking about good shock, there were cases, known cases, where people died as a reaction on fantastic, great news. They waited for this news, and then it's happened, and they were unable to cope. So be careful with shock, whether good or bad. The end result could be bad if you are not taking action to calm down and control your state. Watching news 24/7, obsessing about news. Well, it's very interesting and actually quite typical reaction, because when we are in a stressful situation, especially unwanted change, a lot of biases are happening. The brain goes into autopilot mode if you don't control it, and suddenly all shortcuts in the brain activate. And when we are watching for news, we are going into a stage when we are looking for confirmation of what we think and how we feel. So we are deliberately watching news, we are going into social media, we are looking at comments of others, and we are selectively picking up those which resonate with us, and we filter unconsciously a lot of other information which could be more useful than what we are selectively choosing to look. Because what we are doing, if we are going into this mode, is we are constantly triggering ourselves into the shock state, and we are prolonging this shock stage. So as soon as you realize that you start reacting by watching news 24/7 and being obsessive, just have a break. Stop watching news. Choose to do it for maybe for a few hours or for 1 day or 2 days. Just like that, to break the pattern, and it will be easier for you. Yes, Louise Robin said, brilliant, will share this with my family and team. Yes, please do share. It's very simple, a lot of useful information, very simple, anyone can do it. And the impact on yourself, on your well-being, will be tremendous. Thank you for your comments, Liz, and you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye, everyone.